Hey everybody, welcome to John and James Live. My name is John Hastings with my co-host Mr. James Silo and special guest Chief AI Officer and founder at Takara.ai. You began your career at 19 launching intelligence analytics, a solo project that you scaled into a multi-million-pound business. Welcome, Jordan. How are you today, sir?
Hey, thanks for having me on. I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
Not too bad. Not too
We're all
bad.
good. We're all
Yeah.
good.
So
Did
just
we
saying
pronounce the company name right? Let's just get that at the
Of
beginning.
course. Yeah, Takara is the way we say it. I think the Japanese say it slightly differently, but that's
Okay.
how we say it anyways.
Perfect.
Okay. So us oldies, we're just stepping into this AI game. You look very youthful, Jordan. So I'm
Thanks.
guessing you're a lot younger than us. You surely are. But we're trying to figure out where this, there's a lot of hype around AI, artificial intelligence. You're
Yes,
you're
sir.
on LinkedIn a lot.
hmm
There's a lot of maybe people in their 30s, middle-aged people, or even older than that, are a little bit apprehensive. Is that correct, James? Would we say we're a little bit
Well,
cautious and
we're
maybe not
getting fear,
understanding it
aren't
as
we?
much?
There's a lot of people that are feeling a little bit anxious about how it's going to impact their lives. I think security, job displacement,
hmm
and what's real and what's not real. I think generationally, would you agree with that, John?
I would say so, yeah. And just for Jordan, how would you approach AI if you're just if you're in a business, you're not really using it at the moment? What would your approach be to this impending revolution that we're probably going to go through at the moment?
Sure. Well, I think AI is just like any other software. It can just do things that maybe we couldn't do before. But it doesn't really change the ultimate way that you make systems, which is you find areas in your business which maybe has bottlenecks or things that you think should go better. And then you ask the question, could this be done by AI instead? And doing it that way allows a much more natural way of actually like automating things within your business rather than treating AI as something you should do or you must do. It should be more like I'm automating this process within my business because it makes sense to do that.
Yeah. Okay. So it'd be more like a business analysis to see where you could
For
tune
sure.
things up, optimize it,
Yeah.
automate, and then see if you can use AI tools. So how did you get going in this space? When did you talk to us about where you grew up, what you was into, and how you
Mm.
sort of found yourself getting into AI?
That's interesting. So I taught myself how to code at like 14. So I was doing like HTML, a little bit of Java. I was building like Minecraft servers because me and my mates would play Minecraft together, and that was just kind of fun. And then later on, I was like 16 or 17. I like make some websites in WordPress. Totally hated doing that. I just hated that environment. And I didn't do very well at my A levels, so it was just, I wasn't sure what I was gonna do. I decided to take a gap year after my A levels, and I was like, okay, I'll go do some other stuff. Ended up working on planes at a local airport here in Sawwell because I live in Northamptonshire. And then I was really always into computers, massively into the like building them, configuring them, making software, just making things fast. I really like to make things really fast and efficient. And I still love doing that today. And that ended up sort of spawning into sort of more of what my dad was up to at that time, because my dad had always worked in tech. He'd always been a sales director of like tech companies. I think he was working at that time at E Plus or IGX, and they basically sell like servers and switches and big telco stuff for big businesses. And one of the problems he had was like he couldn't figure out like of this list of people he was contacting whether any of these people actually wanted to buy some of the stuff that they were selling at all. And he was like, hey, Jordan, you're young and you know how to do some Cody stuff. Can you basically try and figure it out? And it took me like a year. I was like DJing on the weekends. I was working at the airport, like doing MOTs on planes, essentially, like taking them apart and putting them back together. And then in the evenings, I would like kind of work on this algorithm and go, okay, maybe if we connect these dots, maybe this will work together. And essentially ended up teaching myself how to do like ML, for like natural language processing, trying to connect the idea of the kind of interactions a company does and the things that the customer might be selling, and matching those things together. So you no longer have the situation where in business to business, you contact 99 people to get maybe one response. You only contact maybe 40 to get like maybe 20 people to respond, and that kind of thing. So it's a much, much better way of doing that. And that sort of worked in that small case at my dad's business over there where he was working. And I was like, oh, what, this surely should be able to be, replicated in other places. So, I ended up just taking that process and putting it into different businesses, scaling that up. Our conversion rates were huge. It was like 40% compared to like 1. So it was just massive conversions. And it was all based off, real data. It was based off LinkedIn data and some really good AI machine learning techniques to just basically do matchmaking. Like Tinder does matchmaking for people, we were doing matchmaking for products and services and stuff like that to people that maybe wanted to buy it. And we were doing all kinds of really cool things, like looking in the images of people at like events and seeing like what vendors were in the background and seeing if they were interested in that and plugging that in. So there was so many cool things that we were doing at that time. And that just went from like I was in my bedroom in this same room today, just like messing around, to like, holy shit, I've got employees. We're working with Amazon, like Microsoft and Google, and like doing all this other crazy stuff for them, which was
Wow.
a journey. And then at the end of 2023, I decided to step away from that project, because I really wanted to work more widely in AI machine learning. I'd been into AI machine learning at that time, for 5 years, building some really, really insane models, both generative and non-generative, in both computer vision and non-vision with text and math and all that sort of stuff. So, and then it was like, I think, both me and my dad understood that there was a massive opportunity in this space, which is everyone wants to do AI for whatever reason, but nobody can build it. And we wanted to be a company that could really build very good solutions at a production grade, for companies. And we decided to become an AWS partner. So we're an AWS partner now. And it's been a year of amazing growth for us here at Takara. And we're building just some awesome solutions that are saving people literally years of their life.
Wow.
Like 5 years in tech is an age, isn't it?
Yeah.
You think 5 years, it's a long time when you're
Yeah, for
talking
sure.
about this kind of thing. So
Yeah.
you were there really almost like at the beginning of this. It's kind of that the wave is starting to take off.
The
And you
wave
were
is
there in
certainly,
the
yeah,
inception phase. So, you're in a great position to go. I mean,
definitely.
people are just coming into it now.
Yeah.
And are trying to catch up, whereas you were there right from the beginning. So I just want to go back to this thing that you said about sort of, all of a sudden we're here, we're employing people. So what was your idea of starting this in terms of what the vision was? Was it just something that you really enjoyed doing and it just kind of evolved? Was there a real structured plan to begin with, or was it organic and just all of a sudden you were in this situation where you could employ people and you are where you are today?
With the first business, there was no plan. There was no plan. I'd never done anything like that before. So it was just sort of like learning on the job, as many entrepreneurs do for the first time. With Takara, it's slightly different because I'd already gone through 4 years of pain and agony on that side, with IA. And so for this time, it was way more planned. The hard part for us was understanding like who the ideal customer was,
Yeah.
what size and shape that might be. It's very difficult. Once you kind of figured that out, everything else kind of slots together, and you can start to hire people with more discrete roles. AI engineers, cloud engineers, project managers, that kind of thing. So, so that's been fairly organic on that side. But the hard part last year was figuring out who exactly are we trying to sell to, and how do we sell to them in the most effective way.
Yeah. How do you go about doing that? Because we've found that as well. It's always that product market type of fit scenario, isn't it? Do you have to speak to X amount of people to get sort of an idea? Is it just a thing where you just have to throw a lot of stuff at the wall and see what sticks?
I think potentially it's number 2. That's what we went through. There's probably more efficient ways looking back at doing what we did, but in an industry that moves at light speed and an industry that has very few, industrial case studies, it's sort of hard to rely on previous information to kind of inform what your sales, sort of process should be. Now we have a really good idea of what that is, but it took probably 6 to 7 months of just like talking to basically anybody,
Anyone, yeah.
any lead, anyone that would buy, to kind of figure out, okay, these guys don't want to do anything. These guys are like way too big and we can't possibly work with these people. And then there's somewhere in the middle that's like, this is good. This is our sweet spot. Yeah.
Yeah. And what happened to the first business, Jordan? What is it still going?
No, I closed it.
You closed it to start Takara.
Yes.
Yeah. And what does Takara do at the moment? What's the main objective of that company?
We build AI machine learning applications to a production standard for businesses. That's what we do. And we solve a lot of really hard problems that automate a lot of workflows in businesses. A lot of the stuff that we build is around automation, and we use a lot of Gen AI. I would say mostly 90% Gen AI to do that. So we're not a typical machine learning house. There's lots of really good partners that can do that. But ultimately what Takara is we build production grade AI solutions for our clients, which is a real issue because most projects don't get to production in the space. Probably 92% don't make it.
So I'd say historically you're replacing like an entire division, aren't you, in a company? When you think about how many people in terms of resources you'd have to employ to be able to come up with these same solutions.
Yeah.
It's a huge cost saving, isn't it, for the business?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You need people that can move at light speed with the industry, but you also need people with enough legacy knowledge about how systems have gone together so that when you work with maybe an older business that doesn't have, amazing process or something, or older technology, that you can interface with those or upgrade them at the same time. You need lots of skills. It's a really, really hard match. And also a lot of these people, the engineers, are hard to get a hold of. They're expensive, and they're either working at places like OpenAI, or they're working, for free in open source communities, or they're working for people like us where it can be more dynamic. So it's we've heard many stories about companies that come to us because they physically couldn't find the resource. Not that they didn't have the money to do so, but they physically couldn't find people qualified enough to do what they wanted it to do.
And is it easy to integrate? So you say you've got quite a kind of a clunky business that comes along. Is it quite seamless to integrate your systems into it? There's no major issue to do that.
No, not really, because we build everything bespoke for our clients at this time. So it's not like we have a set product and we have to kind of like mangle that system into your environment. We'll just take on your environment and just build something for you in there, and then it's all yours. It's you can do what you like with it.
Yeah. So take us back to that time, Jordan, because in my head, when I was a youngster, I was pretty much playing outside, playing football. When guys like you say they're in their bedroom and then they start, trying to make stuff in their bedroom.
Yeah.
What is that process? Because what are you actually using? And then how are you thinking about a problem in terms of solving it? Because there's a lot of criteria in terms of solving a problem, isn't there? So how do you go about, sitting down thinking, okay, my dad's got all of this list of people that he needs to contact and we need to optimize how to, improve the conversion rate. How are you thinking about that as a young guy sitting down at a computer, and what are you using?
Honestly, I'm not thinking much at all. I don't have much domain knowledge in that area, so it's more like it's more like
honest answer. Like it.
It's more like smash your head against the keyboard until something works at that time when you're learning something. Nowadays, it's for me, it's way easier because I've gone through 5 years of that kind of experience. But when you're first doing that kind of thing, you're like, right, I know how to code this. I know how to code that. I have no idea how to code this, but if you Google something enough times and you kind of just apply your critical thinking to something, you can basically solve it eventually. And that's essentially what I did. It's just a collection of, stages and moments of things. Okay, this doesn't work. How do I fix that? This doesn't work. How do I fix that? This doesn't work. And then you just, over time, you realize you've just solved like a massive problem. I've always been a big fan of things going faster and being more efficient. That's like a big thing that I always try to do in everything that I do. If things are more efficient, it uses less energy. If it uses less energy, it's less cost for the end user, or you can just do more with the same. So that quite often fuels my problem solving. It's like, well, I couldn't get this many people through the pipeline at once. How do I get twice as many?
To do it. Yeah. What does your dad think at the moment? Is he keeping up? He's obviously a tech guy. Is he keeping up with everything, or does he think this is breakneck speed? It's
This is
hard
pretty
to keep
fast.
up.
I mean, yeah, I mean, we made Marty, my dad, the CEO of Takara, like I think last July. So, you know, he's a great commercial person in general, like awesome, super awesome. He's been able to stay afloat with his stuff just as well as I have, which is awesome. But it is very fast. You know, 4 weeks is a lifetime in this world. You know, if you go on Hugging Face /papers, you'll see daily papers, research papers on just AI alone, just probably Gen AI alone. There's probably 20 a day. So 20 research papers a day. So it's just super, super fast, the rate. And it's about understanding what is important and also what is maybe applicable to what we're doing at this time, because I often love to bring the bleeding edge technology to our clients where they can basically get a solution that could never be built by anybody else. So they have the quality that no one else has, but also the production grade where it's not going to like fall over because it's just some strung together, you know, piece of rubbish or something. Yeah.
And do you struggle kind of, because I can imagine you going in there and everybody becoming incredibly overwhelmed by the speed and the complexity and the expanse of this is happening. If you've got to really kind of boil it down to really simple terms. I mean, if you came to me and started saying, right, James, you're going to do this, and I'm going like, great, but how do we apply that? And can you put it in really simple terms for me? Are you able to kind of distill it down into a really practical way in which people can understand?
Yeah, of course. I think, again, a lot of technical businesses fail, I think, because they don't understand that most things that they're trying to solve is a business problem, not a technical problem. Unless it's specifically a technical problem, like this database is failing for some reason. Most of this stuff is more of a business problem, like, you know, we have X amount of people, we can't grow this department anymore. We need to process twice as many, you know, support claims or something, as an example. You know, they have that all the time in local government, where they might have a hiring freeze and they have an expanding population and they just need to deal with more stuff. You know, that's the kind of thing that AI is going to do very, very well. But it's more of a process oriented thing, and then AI is just a part of that. And based on that, you just look at some critical thinking, which is just like, is there a solution out there that can already do it pretty well, like a model off the shelf that we can wrap around that? If not, then is it something that we can build or fine tune? If not, we have to then train something from scratch to do that particular process. So it's sort of like, you know, stages of, you know, added complexity, and doing it that way allows, like, you know, essentially doesn't make you reinvent everything or reinvent the wheel every time, which I think is a big problem sometimes, unless you're privacy conscious. So it keeps the cost relatively contained, but also allows you to expand to, you know, basically creating novel situations that have never been built before on Earth for your clients as well.
Amazing. I've got a question here. Someone says, how much data can you process in one go? Is it possible to analyze, example, 4 to 6 years of information?
Yeah, easily. It sort of depends what information that is. You know, if it's 4 to 6 years of like just bank statements or something like that, it's not that much data. You could probably do that in a day. If it's 4 to 6 years of like YouTube videos, that would take significantly longer. So it sort of depends how much it is, but yeah, for sure, 4 to 6 years of information. I think many companies are looking at doing that because they might have huge troves of data like hidden in their business, you know, between like SharePoint or like Paper and Zero and all these other things that they have. They want to just like basically smash that into some sort of database and then be able to search it. Yeah.
Oh, 46 years.
46.
4 to 6.
I think, well, look, I think the amount of years is not I would say the amount of years is not necessarily a blocker. It's amount of data.
The amount of data, yeah.
It's the amount of data. If it's like, you know, if it's, you know, 25 petabytes of data and you only have access to a few machines, it's going to take a long time to do that. if it's 46 years of just like, you know, financial modeling, it's not actually that much data. You can do that in like 20 minutes or something like that. So yeah, I hope that answers.
Is this a matter of like how deep your pockets are as well? Do you think the people obviously leading the way are going to be the richest who can throw as much money at this as possible, or are there going to be a lot of off the shelf cheap solutions that people are just going to be able to sort of drag and drop in?
I think it's a little bit more nuanced with that. I've seen lots of large organizations that have lots of money that are just not agile enough to make use of new technology, you know, so it's less of a money thing. I think it's a bit of both. Like if you're and our customer base is definitely like that. They're customers that have, you know, they're profitable, good businesses, and they have highly agile management teams that value technology. So those kinds of businesses are the businesses are going to do well. So if you have lots of money already and you're listening to this, then become more agile, because you're going to be better than your competition. You know, if you're you know, and a good example of a company that has lots of money and isn't very agile is something like a large government. Like they move extremely slowly. They've got lots of people. They have capital though. Like they have capital to spend, but it's very difficult. So large companies like that struggle. Small companies are always very difficult because they're quite often constrained by you know, capital and also cash flow and stuff like that. You know, they might be growing. If they're VC backed, it's different. But small companies are going to be better off, you know, trying to use off-the-shelf solutions. There are already some amazing off-the-shelf solutions, one of which is ChatGPT. It's an amazing solution. Like, you know, if you want some easy optimizations in your just day-to-day life, like I'll be happily to say you should just pay $20 a month and just get a subscription. Like it's the easiest thing you'll ever do.
Do you ever get a situation, Jordan, that you've got a business that comes to you, and I'm sure there's a lot of businesses that are going, we need to integrate AI into our systems in some way, shape, or form. There must be that feeling or that sense that actually they're going to fall behind if they don't. So do you get businesses coming to you saying, Jordan, we're not entirely sure what we need here, mate. Can you just come in and have a chat and see if there is an application? Presumably there's a level of fear about missing out. So do you get people contacting you without a clear sense of why they need AI in the first place?
It's those kind of conversations are conversations I don't like to have, honestly, because again, they miss the fundamental point of why you're doing AI. If someone tells you to do AI, the first thing you ask yourself is why. Why should I do AI? I understand that AI is really important and it's valuable and it's got a lot of validity to it, but if you're doing AI for AI's sake, all you end up doing is creating something that maybe doesn't actually create any value and then doesn't end up getting to production. And that's where we find ourselves today. As I said before, 92% of projects do not go to a production. And by production, we mean like it's actually running. There's a little proof of concept and then it dies and no one picks it up again because someone's saying from above, you must do AI. People below go, I guess we should do AI then. Then they contact someone like me that knows nothing about their business. And then someone builds them something in AI that then they realize, you know, doesn't have any like ROI value. I would prefer people to not think about AI and think about, you know, I don't want to read paper anymore as a business.
Okay. Yeah. Some fundamental problem solving.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Sensible.
Do it that way.
Yeah, like one of our clients had to upscale, like, you know, they're moving their games to a new method of viewing their games, right? Like on like different screens. They had to upscale all their assets. It would have taken them 30 years to do it, and we did it in 15 minutes with an AI upscaler. So it's that kind of stuff. That kind of stuff is like we just can't do this, or we'd have to hire like 1,000 people to do this process or something like that, right? You know, whereas now we can do it automated. But it's automation, and ideally AI is best when no one knows it's there. That's my fundamental belief.
Another question here, slightly longer one. So Jody says, in 2019, I started learning the basics to Unreal, Unity, Blender, and Substance Painter, spending money completing online Udemy courses. In 2024, I completed a computer games boot camp covering QA, Jira, and team-based development. Now needing to move into less physical but creative work, I'm unsure where that leaves me, especially with AI now covering many of these areas. Have I wasted my efforts, or is there still a way forwards?
I would say you haven't wasted your efforts, primarily because like AI, and I use this lightly, is that a lot of Gen AI systems, especially in creative fields, they can be used to aid that process, and it's very difficult for them, I think, at this stage, or for at least a few years, to take a wider role in that, because you end up with a situation that you have this greater, larger model that can generalize across many different things. And when you generalize a model, you end up creating a model that can do most things averagely well, and not a model that can do anything really specific really, really well. And so my advice to you would be, focus on doing something extremely well that AI, will struggle to generalize to, which is, basically, and especially in Unity and stuff, which is a great engine for simulating stuff and creating games and that kind of thing. I think some of the ideation of games are going to be massively reduced with AI, which is the stuff that we're building already, which is like, if you want to build a game or you want to build a service and you want to kind of ideate with how that looks, AI is an amazing, way of doing that. But then again, if you're creating just plain 2D images, you can expand those to 3D texture maps with like point maps and stuff. It's really difficult. That sort of quality is way off in the deep end. And also you get rasterized images out of them. You don't get vectors, so there's no vectorized ability to get stuff out. I mean, I've even trained one to do vectors, and it still can only do like little icons. It's a massive data problem. I wouldn't be so worried. If anything, like, I would try and not be, because what AI is going to be a jack of all trades, right, in the future, with many of these things. So I would try my best at not being a jack of all trades. I would try and do something that you really enjoy, and do it to a quality level that's very, very hard to beat, for not just for AI, but for other people. And if there's any way that you see in your workflow that you can use AI, I would just use it, because
Just use it.
Yeah, I would just use it, because you're going to be unbeatable, essentially.
Yeah, and I
Good
guess
advice.
you've got to learn pretty much forever now, haven't you? Get into the mindset of continually learning, rather than you learn one thing and have a career for the next 40 years. I guess you got to change your mindset around the
Yeah.
sort of educational process of relearning all the time. Going on that theme of learning, Jordan,
Yeah.
you said about the governments being slow and things like that.
Yes.
What do you think about the impacts on the education system in terms of how that could potentially evolve? Or do you think it's going to hold on for dear life and just stay the same as it is?
I think it's very difficult to say anything, because you're talking about an organization that's just so large that any material change, and also it's so hard to measure as well. Like, if you change one thing about the education system, how do you measure that? You can't measure that until 12 months ahead of time. So you have 12 months of like people going to school, and then you find out if anything worked. I think with AI in school, one of the issues that schools have that AI could maybe help is actually helping them operationally run the school. Not in terms of the education itself. I think the education itself, because humans like human interaction, a lot of them do anyways. And I think that's good. And I don't think we should take away from that. I don't see how an AI teacher would be particularly useful outside of some niche use cases. But one of the biggest issues I always see about schools are financial modeling. They don't do that. Helping them like automate certain processes with their IT infrastructure. So many schools I know have like been, or also, if you excuse my French, bullshit testing like consultants as well is another thing that I think AI could really help with. I know so many schools that have bought smart systems or bought this or bought that because the school headmasters and teachers don't understand technology. And someone comes along and sells them a new technology that says, this is going to revolutionize education. And you love your kids, right? So you must buy this. Like buying 50 iPads and then not doing something with them. You know, these things happen all the time. These things can have a material change on education more than just like, you know, inserting ChatGPT into, you know, the education stream. I think what also could be useful down the line if we have good tracking, because a lot of things we don't have good metrics and tracking for, because a lot of you know, marking and a lot of work is done on paper, and then if you want to do any sort of data science over that, you have to take it off paper and put it into a database. And now we're into a situation which is far beyond the scope of what genuine schools actually do and that they could physically manage. You know, you would actually need someone or some overarching body that can like interface with a highly technical data plane, which I just don't think is a good idea, man. I think they should start small and figure out what are the real problems with schools. Schools have problems with managing money and cash flow. Schools have problems with their IT infrastructure. Jesus, every school has the worst IT infrastructure I've ever seen. And I think AI can help with that immediately. So
can you envisage, I'm just thinking in terms of a bit of philanthropy on your part, Jordan, of creating like a platform where people could go for education around these things, that schools, for example, if they were thinking about integrating something like this, that you could have some sort of advisory thing to say, well, actually, guys, don't go down that route. This is going to be much better for you. But all of that could be automated as well, that information is being continuously updated, that there's a central resource that they could go to. Is that something that would be possible, or you would think about?
Possibly. I think honestly, it's better that it comes from. I would much rather sit on like the government's advisory body or something like that and help them directly, because you know, me talking to a few different schools and trying to help them is not going to really have that much of an impact, to be honest. Like, and they could read some of the stuff that we would put out, but
like a central kind of resource that they could go to if they knew about it. It wouldn't directly sort of have to come from you, but there would be a platform they could go to with a chatbot or, you know, some sort of Q&A system there that they can actually ask those kind of questions. But definitely coming from central government, I think would be ideal, wouldn't it? Because then it's just going to filter down, disseminate all the way through.
I think so. I mean, they're going to have as well. The problem you're going to have is like, you know, context. Do the schools even know the right question to ask? And also like that wider overarching view of like how education actually functions across that's what you want. You want that global context of how is education functioning as a national concept, and then you can deal with the edge case, you know, schools, you know, at a case by case basis. And that's how I would do it. Otherwise, what you end up doing is like, you end up with a system like we have like in healthcare now, where every GP has slightly different processes and systems. And if they were to come to me and say, well, we need this new system, and then another GP comes along and says, we need help with this system, you don't end up helping anything. You just end up automating a few things, and then everything's different and doesn't plug in together. It makes way more sense if we define very simply. I'm not about making these huge, massive AI, documents that the government puts out. I think they're worth about as much as toilet paper, but just to get an idea of, okay, this is what we're going to do, and this is going to save a bunch of time, and just really easy, day one changes that they can do and implement, and everyone implements it the same way. That should be school agnostic. That's the way it should be. Otherwise, you just create more problems down the road.
In terms of the learning inside the schools, Jordan, and my daughter's in year 11. I was speaking to my friends that they got kids in year 9 at the moment. And I spoke to them about ChatGPT, and this is not even part of the curriculum. They're not using it. They're not really talking about it. Yeah. Is this an issue, or does it take a bit of time for this to come through? And do you think they need to be educating people on these big changes that are coming up?
It's an interesting question. It's a hard question to answer, again, because computer science as a medium moves at a speed so fast that it is almost impossible to educate at a certain level. If you teach a student about ChatGPT, by the time they get out of school, it might be completely different. The only way I've seen it work well is by, instead of saying, because it's different from other things like civil engineering, healthcare, creative, like sciences, other sciences. There's an element of rules. Okay, there's like, these elements plug together and it becomes water, hydrogen and oxygen, or this is the way you build a bridge so it doesn't fall over in the wind. With computer science, it's like, this is the way we make apps now, and in 3 years we're going to make apps in a completely different way. So I think weirdly, I think to a certain level, computer science is incompatible with a rigid educational system. I mean, I was told at school that I wasn't allowed to do computer science because I wasn't smart enough, which is, so there's
Go
just
figure.
so it's there's just a fundamental, I think, what ends up working well. Okay, there's only certain people that can do computer science. Fundamentally, I believe that there are people that can code and there's people that just can't, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And so there's kind of no point kind of like doing this wide overarching thing where it's like, oh well, people, there's loads of money in computer science, we're just going to get everyone to try and learn that. I think that the way it's been working so far is the best engineers are people that are really passionate about it and end up learning a lot of this stuff on their own in a very dynamic element. And that's been the way it's been for 20 to 30 years. All the really high class engineers, all the people at OpenAI are people that have basically just min-maxed their own life. They might have gone to uni to do computer science, and they'll all tell you that they threw all that stuff away once they left. And so really what you want to do is, instead of actually having, ChatGPT and like other like, computer science stuff, finangled into an existing education system, I would honestly leave the education system alone. And if people are really interested in AI and computer science, that there's a separate way that we tell people how to learn that thing, because you've got to learn by doing and by just getting involved. I think the best thing, honestly, is like, let's say let's say somebody joins Google and just gets, immediately inserted into the YouTube team on how they're making that piece of software, or immediately, inserted into the AI teams over there. They're going to learn far faster and far more effectively than any university course or any school could do in a single year. They will learn more than they would in 5 years at university, I guarantee you, because you get exposed to so many different concepts all at once. And you can learn directly from people that have domain knowledge. If you look at many universities, the hiring qualifications for AI and computer science don't even mention anything about computer science. It's purely academic only. And what you want to do is you want to learn from people that have direct experience and are working at the bleeding edge. That's what you want to do. And you want to basically take the people that want to do computer science and like massively turbocharge them, rather than just, I would say, as a good example, my girlfriend has never used ChatGPT once, ever. And she says that I don't want to use it. And she's a creative person and she doesn't have to use it. She doesn't have to know anything about it. So I would say, if you're interested in computer science, if you're interested in building computers, servers, ChatGPT and AI stuff, I would say go for it. Go for it as fast as you can, and learn as much as you can on your own, and just keep up with this industry. I would say if you're a school, don't worry about that, man. Maybe just make a sort of a wider overarching understanding of, hey, AI is this thing and it exists, and these are different things that AI can kind of do at the moment. That's fine. But teaching the ultimate fundamentals of what an LLM is or something in a school, I find that just so arbitrary. And also, computer science is such a big field. It would almost be better to just have a singular school where, like, at 16, it's like, man, I really want to do computers and I don't want to do anything else, and you just leave the entire thing alone. You just go to computer science school and you can learn, like, application design, cloud design, or like AI or machine learning. And basically it's just a whole bunch of like computers in a room and you just go, see you later and enjoy. Something like that.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here listening. Jordan, I'm just thinking about what these kind of chat rooms are like in the community of people that are doing this. And I kind of have this romantic sense that it's full of people that are quite counterculture and very disruptive, and they're seeing what's going on in the world and they just see things differently. Is that the case, or am I just completely...
No, you're totally right. It's a bunch of people that love breaking stuff.
Yeah.
There's we're taught a lot to not break things. Actually, we're supposed to leave it alone and, you know, just it's working. Okay. Whereas a lot of us in the group chats and stuff like that are like, this sucks. I want to take a big hammer and just smash the crap out of it and then see if we can make it better. And we just don't mind burning our own free time in trying to smash it as hard as you can and see if you can reinvent something. Especially, and I'd say there's a lot of people that don't even know how good they are. And there's a lot of undervalue with people and where they work as well. But in our group chats, we're just a bunch of people that love breaking stuff. You talk to all the people that go to the hackathons, like the hackathon we're doing in Paris this weekend. Again, it's just a bunch of people that just love to just make stuff and just go, I don't know how to make this. Doesn't matter. And they just make it anyways. So that's the perfect.
And it's sharing. I can imagine, again, that community. There's not everybody sort of keeping all this information to themselves. There's massive, dissemination of this information, new findings, that stuff has been kind of stumbled across. And it's like, holy shit, that worked really well. Let's just put it out into the community.
Absolutely. Open source is massive. Like if you applied open source to healthcare, we would have solved so many things already. But in healthcare, it's like, I have a patent for this and I'm not telling you the secret formula to my insulin drug, right? Whereas in computer science, it's like, I've just revolutionized AI. Here's the code, here's the weights, and here's how I did it all for free.
Yeah. And I mean, open source is a bit of a double-edged sword, isn't it? It's the fact that it is all out there.
Yeah.
And there's no sort of safeguarding of it. So it's this kind of slightly concerning situation where so much of the information is open source and available to anybody to utilize for whatever they want.
Yeah.
And how far do you then go to sort of say, well, actually, in terms of being used for nefarious means, that are our safeguards to prevent that from happening?
Sure. I mean, time is told again. Open source has been a thing for a long time, 30 years at least. And all the things that people say that could have happened with open source, like open sourcing this tool or whatever, haven't come to fruition. You'll find bad actors in anything you do. So that's the situation. But most people, as in all things, just want to build cool technology and just keep building it. Again, open source is one of those things where you just put it out there and people want to use it. I mean, it's different. If you open source some like obviously nefarious stuff, then that's a different situation. But
but I think almost the community polices itself, doesn't it? If that happens, then everybody kind of closes ranks, I should imagine.
Yeah, we police each other. Like, I mean, people don't really post that. Not that I see that much anyways. I mean, it's going to be less than 1%. Less than 0.1% of stuff that gets released. This like of any nefarious sort of, for the most part, why would anyone open source nefarious stuff anyways? It just makes no sense. So you end up finding a lot of this stuff's closed sourced anyways. And the people that use open source stuff to make nefarious things, I mean, it's been happening for a long, long time, but it's more fundamental stuff, again, that you would have to build anyways. So you're not going to stop that ever, whether it's open source or not open source. People are just going to build it. So yeah, pretty much.
Where do you see, if you put your philosophical hat on, Jordan, and you sort of project into the next 20, 30, 40 years, what is what is optimization for, really? Is it to make our lives better? And is that the direction we're going in? Because, some people I'm not saying it's you, but in your realm, they're not necessarily, maybe they're a little bit more socially awkward or detached in a certain way, and they're not as switched on when it comes to society.
Sure.
Yeah. So what you think, John? Don't beat around the bush, mate.
Sometimes you can optimize stuff that doesn't really need optimizing, and actually life gets worse. So where do you see the use of technology? Is it to improve human life? Is it to stop working? Is it to work less? What's the deal with it in your
honestly view? I think we're all gonna basically, if you amortize, there's gonna be some immediate stuff that happens when technology gets put into place. And you see this like throughout history, like when the car was made, and like people suddenly started buying carbs, well, you just didn't need that many farriers anymore because people didn't buy horses. And it was the same when we made like big loom machines, and it was like, well, we don't need children to like make our clothes anymore. So there are some places where you get immediate displacement, but amortized over such a long period of 30 to 40 years, I bet you find that people are working just as much as they used to be, maybe even a little bit more in some cases. I'd say like what's going to be super cool in the future is, search is going to be so much better. Search is going to be so much better. It's going to be really good, which is going to be great because people that used to have to do like 5 Google searches to get what they want is going to be great. I think the cost of AI is going to probably reduce to almost zero in 40 years. Like the cost of AI now is large, but it's like 900x less than it used to be 2 years ago, especially for LLMs. And that trend is going to continue to the point where it's going to be ridiculously cheap, to the point where it's now like Google. Like Google's been run on AI for years, right? Like, and no one ever queries about the cost of that thing. So I'm expecting it's going to return to that sort of level, and it will sort of equilibrize at that sort of level. What I don't understand is like what AGI is, because everyone has a different metric for what that is and what that means for people. Whether people could actually use AGI in some level or ASI, if you had a super smart chatbot, would anyone actually find a use case for that in some methods? Whether LLMs actually further expand, or whether there's actually a bit of a retraction from LLMs and back into traditional machine learning, I think will be quite interesting. And also quantum technologies might eventually bear fruits in about 30 to 40 years, hopefully. But what I see ultimately are companies that aren't able to understand their own business and automate processes using AI will fail, and they should fail because they're not very good businesses. And the businesses that do continue to, transform the businesses over time with technology and become more profitable and more competitive will beat these businesses, and they should. It's the simple, like Aldi is just a better business than Sainsbury's is. And that's why they take more market share. And that's going to be the same in businesses that take on this kind of technology. So I think we'll see a massive shift. I think NVIDIA will still be dominating in 30 to 40 years. I can't see many people taking a bite out of their ass. I think there's going to be a massive push towards inference optimization. Edge AI is not really a big thing yet. Trying to get AI as close to the user as possible is going to be so cool. On-device AI is going to be really big, not in the ways that developers think it is, like, using your own chatbot on here, but like, you won't even know it's there and it's on your iPhone and it's working and it's helping you, search for things or find things or, whatever, right? All these things are going to help us buy products better, search for restaurants better, find how to go from one place to another place, right? Like, taking all the sentiment analysis and NLP data of maps would make our lives so much better. The new computer vision models with LMs, make it so much crazier understanding the world around us with like Google Street View. All these things don't even plug together yet. So, which is very cool. Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of that making stuff better, Jordan, let's take an example of the health industry. So we've got a lot of health tech now. We've never had more health professionals than ever before.
Sure.
You've got very good systems, computer systems behind the scenes. You've got NHS apps. You've got your online mental health, well-being stuff. But people in terms of in the US, I was reading an article this morning, 50% of people are diabetic or pre-diabetic, 73% of people are overweight or obese, 45% of kids are overweight, people are on crazy amounts of antidepressants, anxiety tablets. So you've got all the tech in the world, and you're optimizing things to the nth degree, but it doesn't solve any of the problems. They're actually getting a lot worse. How does that work in terms of optimization and tech? Is it really solving problems, or at the moment we're just symptoms based thinking and we need something that's, you know, bigger picture, solutions based, first principles thinking in terms of how you optimize a society?
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting because, you know, a lot of these are human problems, not technology problems. You also have this element of like, you know, you could do, and there are right now, you know, AI is amazing. AI machine learning is amazing at like drug discovery, you know, mapping genomes, doing this crazy stuff, you know, to make, you know, drugs that are cheaper, more effective, with less side effects and that kind of stuff. And that's not going to change. And we're going to get much better, you know, drugs for that use case. But there's also another question is, you know, should we be using them in the first place? You know, should we just have people that are just less depressed in the first place? So we don't have the need for the drugs or the drug discovery, right? And that's a multifaceted problem that I think the only way that AI can help in that case is trying to understand the causes, not necessarily trying to understand the fixes for that, but understanding the causes so that we can try and work out what the solution should be, right? So if we take like if we take the whole population of the UK and apply a really good quality AI model across that population, and we have amazing data that we can study off, like, and that tells us, you know, people are more depressed because of this reason, then you can start to you know, attack those problems. At the present time, you don't have that. You just have a bunch of people that are overweight, or you just have a bunch of people that are more depressed than before, and we just have no idea like what the major facets are. There are small subset like studies and people's opinion on what that might be, but what we really need is like, over the last 10 years, people have become more depressed because of X reason, or a list of X reasons with their percentage impact. And then you can just decide, okay, based on those impacts, now we can attack them with whatever that might be the use case. It might not be AI. It might not even be technology. But I think by using technology, because that's the only way you can do it, you can't actually like, you know, use like people and data and stuff like that to gather that level of data. But with AI, you certainly could start to uncover those problems.
And what do you think in terms of inverse incentive structures? Let's say you're a pharmaceutical company who's making billions from diabetes.
Yeah.
What's your incentive to use technology to eradicate diabetes? And that could you sort of extrapolate that across the board when it comes to actually solving fundamental problems? That it's not commercially very good to solve problems. It's a lot better to manage symptoms on a financial basis.
Sure. I mean, that's a typical like supply and demand problem, isn't it? If your demand goes down because no one has diabetes, then, you know, your supply goes away. But the only way you're going to fix that is by deregulating those spaces, because at the moment it's just so expensive to actually make a drug or to make anything that could do that no one's going to do it, right? You know, it's harder to incentivize companies to break their own profit models than it is just to deregulate a space so that other players can play in that space and disrupt them for you, because the greed of other people trumps another individual's greed every time. So, you know, that's going to be way easier. Trying to tell like Pfizer or Moderna or those people, hey, you should make this drug that's going to delete your own profit margin. They're going to lobby you into the next century. Okay, they're never going to do that. But if you said, okay, you guys do that over there, no worries, you guys keep profiting, but we'll let some smaller players with some drug discovery stuff come in and try and delete this problem for us, and it's all above board.
Yeah.
Then that's going to be great. Like that's what you want. You want competition in this space, as long as it's safe, but that's what you want. You want competition. And right now there's very little, because it takes billions to make that kind of stuff happen.
I mean, it's always going to be evolution of these things. I mean, you look at GLP-1s that have come out of diabetes medication, so it'll just kind of morph potentially into something else. So it's fascinating to see how these things are going to go. But it's an interesting future for sure.
I'm just wondering if that's how the tech space is thinking on that type of level, or is it just to try and extract profit is that how are people thinking in that space? Because we are obviously living in this capitalist world, but obviously the innovations in technology has got the potential for sort of abundance, access, displacement. Are we actually got to think bigger now that these this tech is type of available? There isn't that, you know, fundamental scarcity. Do we have to think on a different level, Jordan, at this point in time?
I think for sure there's definitely some players who are already thinking like this, like us. You know, one of them, I can't remember their name, I'm sorry, but they just made a company in the US made like the latest supercomputer or something for doing like genetic modeling and drug discovery. They have 25 petabytes of data that they're like additionally mining every day to do this, with the idea that they just want to basically create the best drugs for certain use cases to disrupt the typical you know, pharma workflow, right? Because and it's all based on, you know, right, to go for a profit, right? People don't do this shit for free, but what you want is, you know, to allow companies like that to use modern technology to try and disrupt these industries. I think people are looking at all different ways, because the biggest constraint is compute and energy in this case. You know, how much data can you stuff through that GPU? How many GPUs do you have to do? And the more you have, the more learning you can do. If you can do more learning, if you can do more simulations, you can build better drugs. That's just this. The scaling laws do apply. If you have more data and more GPUs, you just make better decisions. Like, it's just better. So that's where it's going. Some companies are not set up to do that, and they will struggle to maintain their dominance. Some companies that do that are going to be really, really hard to beat, for sure.
Yeah, fair enough. And what about yourself, Jordan? Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years with Takara? Where do you see yourself going with that? Would it be a good idea for you to get bought out by a bigger company, whether it's, you know, Google DeepMind or ChatGPT, and then you have then the financial resources to go and do very unique things inside of that with the financial backing? Or do you like being sort of the outsider, working by yourself, figuring out the problems? Where do you see yourself going with that?
Yeah, sort of interesting, because you know, we have, like, I think we have, you know, 14 people in research now and a few over in professional services. And so we're one of the last you know, Gen AI labs in the UK now, you know, that's fully owned by Britain. You know, because DeepMind is Google and Stability AI is mostly American and Chinese owned now. So, you know, we're one of the last ones left, and it's I take a lot of pride in that. I think it does make sense at some point for us to get bought out by somebody that wants, like, basically where I see us going is, for AWS, we're already a leader for Gen AI for them in Europe. And I would like to be a real leader, you know, global leader in making, you know, production grade Gen AI solutions for businesses. I think it's totally possible in 5 years that we're the leader in that space easily, because, you know, we're able to build things that no one else can build, and our rate of learning is so quick. It's just very hard for people to keep up with us. And we were built specifically to do that. So existing technology partners, it's very difficult for them to pivot over to that mindset. And so in 5 years, I see us being a big behemoth in this space that's making some amazing use cases. And probably at some point we will get bought out by one of the companies that wants that ability on their balance sheet, and wants our, you know, our ability to do frontier research as well as do professional services. And then you know, I'd love to be able to then take some of that capital and build something amazing. You know, in 5 years, it's going to be a completely different space. I think the next 12 months are going to be, you know, really, really key for certain areas. I think video is for sure the next frontier that we have to try and attack. And in 5 years, it'll be very, very good. And then it's probably onto physics. Then it's probably onto physics-based models and seeing how we can make those even better, to make better decisions for people in their daily lives. So I'd love to be able to take some of those harder problems and see if we can solve some really difficult problems that give material impact changes to people with the stuff that they do every day.
And how can people get in contact with you, Jordan? What's the best way to get in touch?
It's very easy. You just contact Jordan at Takara.ai. Yeah, my email is very easy. Or you can just contact me on LinkedIn. I'm always on LinkedIn. I'm a bit of a LinkedIn, insect, just kind of hanging around all the time, So yeah, that's how you can do it.
Is there a business size or a business type that you're more working with, or it could be?
For sure, we sort of target sort of T2 enterprise customers. We don't do much with small business or extremely large ones. We don't work with public sector. But if you're in that sort of middle ground, and you have an agile team, and your major problem is that you don't have access to the people that can build you something really special to automate something that you find incredibly annoying at work, or that's really hitting your profitability, then give us a call, because we'll build you something really fantastic.
Perfect.
Fabulous.
No, I appreciate that, Jordan. Thank you for coming on. You're obviously a very switched on guy. I feel slightly left behind, actually, than you, James.
I don't feel intimidated at all, mate. I'm
just holding on to the side of a cliff here.
Yeah, literally for dear life.
But yeah, thanks for that, Jordan. No, thanks everybody for tuning in and the questions. And if you got other questions, just leave them, and then myself, James, and Jordan answer them afterwards. So,
of course.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day, and we'll speak to you soon.
Thank you so much.
Much appreciated, mate. You're very welcome. Thank you.
We'll see you on the other side, Jordan. Bye bye.